Good morning, good morning, good morning. What is up, my friend? Happy Thursday. What's going on today? Are you having a good week? As always, drop me a note in the comments. Let me know you are here. If you are watching over on the website, mikecameron.ca/live, you can drop a note in the chat there. And we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation today. My guest today, Ethan, was introduced to me through Cornerstone Counseling. I was doing some work with them and they said, have you met this Ethan guy? Because he's doing some pretty cool things and he's got a pretty cool story. And he's one of the ones that's willing to share his story in the hopes of making an impact and making a difference with respect to men's mental health. I'm going to say men's mental health. I think he's all over just mental health in general. Hey man, how you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I'm doing fantastic because I am a morning guy. We had this conversation beforehand. Ethan's not a morning guy. He started his own business, so he didn't have to be a morning guy.
Yep, that's it. Be your own boss. So you don't got to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, that's my partner Michelle is much the same way. She is not a big fan of mornings. So yesterday morning, I think I woke up at 4:45 and was kind of bouncing around the bed. And she's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's time to get up." No, it's not.
No. That's not. Early. That's an accidental wake up. I had to pee. Now go back to bed.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not often up before 5, but usually around 5-ish. I'm up and moving and try and get my workout started at 6 or yoga, meditation, whatever it is. All right, my friend. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're all about.
Yeah, my name's Ethan Nicholas. Just turned 30. Mental health advocate and personal trainer here in Alberta. Honestly, I never thought I'd be doing this with my life, but it's taken me here with some healing and therapy and just wanting to share my story and realizing that my story needed to get out. Somebody needed to hear it and know that they can keep persevering and get through this life and get through this shit and the ugly to get to the other side. So yeah, that's what I devote my life to now, is both physical and mental health.
So what is a mental health advocate? What does that mean to you?
It started with just, I guess, the raising of awareness, like letting people know that there is a huge problem and concern. For me, it was starting to share my story. When I started therapy in 2018, it was just this idea, this feeling that somebody needed to hear a piece of my story. And for me, it was, if I can be frank, I was not expecting to survive that year. I was really low and really dark and thought that if somebody kept fighting because they heard a piece of my story and I died the next day, I'd count that as a win. So I, wrote out a piece of my story just on my phone and converted it to a Facebook post and shared it. And now we're here 2 years later. Honestly, I feel like I blinked and now I'm here.
So what's that done for you, the sharing of your story?
Initially nothing. And it was what was weird. It was the realization that this was going to be the calling on my life. It was not like I set out to be here. I wanted to write the one piece and had planned to commit suicide not long thereafter. And after I put the first piece out, people were messaging me, a few apologizing for the stuff that I'd been through, but more being like thanking me for sharing. And, I survived the first wave of that, and all of a sudden I was sitting in my therapist's office, my hand started to shake, and I couldn't figure out why until I got a pencil in my hand, and then I wrote out another piece just sitting in therapy, and then wound up sharing that, and it kind of kept going like that. I'd be walking or having a bad day, and all of a sudden my hands would start to shake, and I'd need to get something out, and that was how I would get my pieces out every few weeks. The more I shared, the more people interacted with it, and it kind of... it gave me this hope that I might be able to do something with the shitty story that I've had. And it's always been for me, like, what am I here to do? All I've been doing is surviving this whole time and not making the best life choices and not wanting to live. And I mean, I still struggle with that, but for me, I guess it in the early goings, it was I knew somebody was hearing it, and that was good enough for me. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't change my perspective. I was still very early on in my healing process and healing journey myself. So I didn't really get the benefits of it. Now I get to rest in the fact that the work I do does help change this world for the better. So now I've adapted to understanding that. But early on, it was for people. It was so that somebody would see this and
Right.
keep fighting another day.
Hey, Alan, how you doing, man? Alan is another mental health advocate out of Boston that
Alan.
that I've been hanging with for quite some time. Good to see you here, Alan, man. And Anne, good morning. So I got a couple of different locations that we're streaming.
Okay.
So if you see me looking over here or looking over there, it's not because I'm not paying attention. It's because I am paying attention. Anne's over here, Alan's over there, and
Dave's over there. Christina's
yeah,
over
we
there.
got people everywhere. We got people everywhere. So share with us a little bit of your story.
All right. Might as well just dive into the ugly. I started being abused at 5 years old, and it lasted for a decade. It lasted until I was 15. My abuser just happened to be the person that was supposed to be my father. I call him Lenny or the demon, depending on what mood I'm in. And yeah, it for me, it was life. It happened so early that I never got to learn right from wrong before it started happening. That was my life. I assumed that everybody went through something like this. I assumed that this was just how it was supposed to be, and it has really fucked me up. Like, it really has. It fucked up my love map. I learned that physical affection is love. Right. And it fucks me up still this day. I have to fight that a lot today. It's cost me tons of relationships. It's cost me a lot of things throughout my lifetime, just not liking it. And then it went to anger. Somehow in 10 years, somehow a little boy that loved life and was super bright and shining all of a sudden wasn't. And nobody said shit. Nobody noticed. And that's what killed me. That's what I'm writing about now more often than not, making videos on, is like, nobody knew. Nobody knew. Nobody felt something was off when I was so angry all the fucking time. When I was getting into trouble for being overtly touchy with people in school. And I mean, I remember we're friends now, but there was a girl, I won't name her, in grade 2. And we were both doing weird, well advanced touching of each other in grade 2. We both had our own backstories. And she went on to, marry a man of color and have a beautiful baby girl. And we make the joke that we completely ruined it for each other because, now we just both I like white women, she likes black men. And that's our running joke. But that was life for me throughout grade school. I was getting in trouble for being too cuddly, being too touchy, and that's how my home life was.
Right.
Like, I was being cuddled at home every day, and it never computed with me. I've been caught, and teachers had brought both my parents in, and nobody fucking knew. And still, nobody knew. Fast forward to my story. I'm in cadets, put in there for attitude problem. Go figure. Apparently, taking me away from where my abuser was and putting me into a place where people were going to tell me what to do didn't go well for everybody else. I didn't like it. And so I started getting into fights. I was searching for an identity, and that became the protector. I've always, for my entire life, people have told me I've had a real serious hatred for injustice. Right. I cannot stand it. And that started at a young age. And so when I got set free and was able to go run amok, I was solving people's problems for fun. My second year in cadets, I'm at a military base not far from here, working on a drumline thing. A kid from my home squadron's picking fights with me all the time, being a racist dink. I've had enough. I threaten his life. He threatens mine. Nothing really comes of it until my brother comes to camp, my younger brother. He threatens my younger brother, and that was it. I threw his ass out a window, and the military police got involved. One of my sergeants from my squadron pulled me aside into one of the soundproof rooms, and literally all she said to me was, "Are you okay? What is going on? No, nobody should be this angry. What is going on?" And apparently that's literally all it took. And I just freaked out. like freaked out. I was like, this is happening at home. I feel like this is wrong, but it's been going on for so long. Nobody's helped me, and so like this doesn't feel right to me. And that was it.
So
She
was that the first time you disclosed?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like honestly,
It was simply because somebody asked.
somebody asked. Like that's literally all it took. Somebody asked me, and that she asked one time. I was sitting in the room. I remember where I was sitting and how I was sitting, and I just let it go. I was like, I can't. So I made her promise not to tell. Obviously, she had to tell, and the police were involved, and the Zebra Foundation was involved, and Lenny was taken out of the home because my brother was sent home that year, so he had to be removed. Lenny was gone, and yeah, and that kind of kick-started him going to jail, and then the life of being an absolute shit and terror for me. It was a crazy thing. It was like another switch flipped. As soon as he was gone, I was out.
Right.
The fear was gone. I couldn't get beat anymore. So I started beating people.
Oh, interesting. So
I went off the deep end. That protector and identity came out because I've been this big for a very long time. And then I was angry, and somebody happened to catch me being angry at my first house party and punched out a bunch of people. And so they used it. They took my anger and my size and offered me a job as security for the house, and not nice people coming around. And so that's how I lived for a long time, getting fucked up and fucking people up.
So how'd you move through that? How'd you get out of that?
How to get out of it? The first time out, I had to pay for it. That kind of started. I got arrested for a massive fight in the middle of a road. We got jumped on our way to a house party, and just a rival group of guys got after a couple of our guys and turned it into a whole thing in the middle of a street. A couple of my guys seriously injured one of these kids. I stayed there to hold his head together. Well, until the ambulance came, I got arrested because I was the only one left. Got picked up from the cop shop at 4:30 by my mom and my younger brother, and you couldn't tell who I was. I was covered in like head to toe in someone else's blood. You didn't know that it was me. And the look on my brother's face, I was like, I remember thinking, there's no way I could bring him into this lifestyle. I don't want him anywhere near this. So I started to run away. I fucked off to BC for a little bit, came back, got into a bunch of trouble while I was here, had to leave the province to protect my family. I took a problem that somebody else created for me and had to deal with it in another province to protect my family. And I just started bouncing around, and honestly, working through it didn't really start until I was 25, maybe.
Right.
And it was after my last relationship had ended, I decided to go to school for personal training, and yeah, it kind of kickstarted. I met a girl in school. She pushed me to start healing. Went to my church. They set me up with the current therapist. I'm still with the guy, and then that's kind of how I started to work through it. But no, like I honestly, up until I was 28, I was really still struggling, and I still do. I still, like, anger is my go-to. I can't shake it. I really can't. Alan, I feel you, brother. Like, I cannot. It is my anger kept me alive as long as it has, and I don't know what to do with it when it happens. But right now, that anger, I just repurpose it. I put that level of frustration and honestly hatred for injustice into the work that I do now. Do I still get angry on the negative side? Fuck yes. You know, you can't see injustice every single day and feel like you're beating your head against a wall, against some insurmountable mountain, and not get angry. So it still comes out. It still comes out when I have episodes, when I have massive depressive or suicidal swings. I get really angry or frustrated with myself. But no, that anger was seething hatred for Lenny and wanting him to die. I still honestly struggle with it. If I got the phone call tomorrow, it wouldn't faze me. Hence the name Ethan Nicholas. If you look me up on Instagram or Facebook, it'll say Woodham on there. I refuse to own that name anymore. And I'm tired of the grip it's had on me. In my story last year in 2019, I tried to reconcile. I wanted answers. I wanted to know why. Maybe I thought like maybe if I understood, like if you're, you hear it all the time, offenders offend and all that other bullshit. So I
Right.
thought, if I can at least understand, maybe it will help me with some clarity into why it happened and I can move forward. And he didn't want to give me the answers. He just wanted to defend himself and this and that in front of me. And that was it for me. I said, fine, you'll never see your granddaughter again. You'll never see me again. I'm tired of trying to do something that you refuse to do for yourself. So you are dead to me. That's it. I'm done.
Right.
And it's been the most beautiful decision I could have made. Like, it really was.
So, but how do you get that? I don't know if closure is the right word then. So how do you move through that? Because I mean, again, that sort of forgiveness piece, that finding empathy piece, is not for him. It's for you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
how do you
keep telling me that?
Sorry?
Everybody keeps telling me that.
Yeah, no, I know. That's what I mean. Like, it's a fucking easy thing to say.
Yeah, and if I'm being honest, I didn't forgive him. Forgiveness is between him and God. Right. Honestly, I'm not obligated to forgive him.
Yeah.
The thing that, that's the fucked up thing people do. It's easy to tell somebody, forgive them. Forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. Well, that's great. Wonderful. Fan-fucking-tastic. Tell me how. Tell me what I'm supposed to feel like after it happens. Tell me how everything about my 30-year existence has been about the abuse. How I cannot hug my nephew without having to take a deep breath for fear that I may hug him wrong.
Right.
Like, tell me how I can't look at my 3-year-old daughter that looks just like me when she does something wrong and not come fucking unglued at her. Because I can't understand my own anger, because that's how I've lived my life in defense of some asshole.
Right.
See, people say, forgive, do that, till they have to. So for me, it's not about forgiveness. For me, it's about moving my life forward and stop letting him hold on to my shit and control what I do. So I just fucking let it go.
Yeah, but I don't know. So that's easy to say. I can hear it in your voice. You haven't let that go.
No, I haven't let it go, but I let him go.
Right, for sure. For sure. And absolutely that's, cutting that the stimulus out of the equation is absolutely the first step. But yeah, it's super interesting to me because again, I look at that from obviously my situation is different. It wasn't directed to me directly. It was indirect. And so finding that forgiveness for me was about, again, it had nothing to do with the offender. It was all about letting go of the anger.
Yeah, I repurpose mine.
Yeah, but at some point, I mean, there's the repurposing for sure, but at some point it's still bubbling under there, doing things. Like you said, you still don't understand it or know how to control it. And so what do you see when that anger comes up? Like, if you were to step back and instead of being the experiencer, if you were to be the observer of that anger, what do you see from a thoughts and feelings perspective?
Oh, I can tell you what people tell me what they see all the time. My support circle tells me what they see. I need to know what they see. For me, I've got my 2 roommates here that help me out with support and are around me constantly when I have those mood swings. And for Stuart, my one roommate, he says that he can feel the pain, like palpable in there. He says it's just, I know you're hurt. I know it hurts. It cuts you in your core when you see that stuff happen, when you know that injustice is happening. Like that's what triggers my anger the easiest. And I would say that in any given situation, it's some form of injustice.
Right.
And it's like always. And it can be minuscule.
Yeah.
It could be small stuff. Like if we're talking my nephew, we'll use a simple example. The other day I was in a meeting and he's jumping around upstairs like being a kid, just being a kid, being perfectly fine, and yet they're trying to help him stay quiet, and they yelled at him, and he starts crying. Now I'm annoyed because he's crying instead of just jumping around, which I was fine with. And it's like he got unfairly yelled at because he's jumping around, but I caused it, and I caused that level of injustice for him, and that irritated me. And it's like something just ridiculous like that. Like I pull injustice in, and I'm like, I'm just gonna snack on the injustice. If it kills me, it kills me. Fine. And it's like it's just always some version of that, and it's super irritating sometimes because I'd be like, I don't want to just kaboom at stuff.
Right. So what does that irritation feel like when you first?
Oh, I get hot, like super hot.
But what does that mean? Like, break it down for me.
I get hot, like right in my core. That's the first place I notice it. Like it's like all the energy gets sucked. I can feel it like a vortex get sucked right to my core. And if I don't catch it early enough, it goes everywhere else and it becomes a whole thing. But it's legit. I can't just explain it as anything else that I get super hot right in my core. And if I don't use my grounding exercises, it gets out of control. So I've had like plenty of time to work on that. My therapist Jay is a solid human being. He's very good at bringing me back from that point. And so I do a lot of grounding work, a lot of breathing when that comes into play, or I go work out. I channel that we have a punching bag outside and stuff, so I channel that. He just did to working out for half an hour, and usually I can get it back under control.
Right.
It's when I'm not home first. What's that?
What are some of the exercises you use that work for you?
Grounding breath is a big one for me, which I'm surprised at, because like I said, I don't do the sitting still very well. But if I really, really focus and make it about the breath rather than sitting still, the sitting still comes secondhand. If I'm told I have to sit still for it, like it makes me, I want to just twitch out and go. The grounding breath is one thing. Spending some time, like I'll turn worship music on, just pace my basement and sing, and that's probably my bigger one is music. Spending time with God like that, or just like being able to zone out when I'm listening to music. Like music saved my life, no question about it. But when I get to channel that, I can really block the rest of the world out, and I can experience other emotions and emote through music. It's the easiest way to get me to do it. And so I can channel that kind of energy through music and just, breathe through it and just pace and sing and get lost in the music for a little bit. And then I can look at either come back to the situation and look at it more rationally, or the situation's over.
Right. Yeah. I was having this conversation, I think yesterday or the day before with another musician who talked about exactly that. But we talked a little bit about for him, the music is only temporary. So that becomes problematic for him because it's great while he's in the music, but as soon as it goes away, then those feelings come back up again. And we use the analogy of the weight vest. As guys, we run around wearing this fucking weight vest all the time. And he said, yeah, when I play my music, it's like I take the weight vest off. So I asked him, I said, okay, so when you put your guitar down and you're done, he says, yeah. He says, I put the weight vest back on.
For me, it's a little different. And the only reason being, I would think for me is the worship music side of it, because I'm spending time in my faith and in my time learning. And that's been hard to surrender. Like people say surrender and forgive. They're often used interchangeably that way. And I find the forgiveness aspect really hard, but being able to surrender it is a lot easier for me because I literally, if I could turn my camera, I have a long ass basement down here living room, and I have a big ass sound system, so I'll put worship music and I'll just pace, and I will go from praying to yelling at God at times when I'm just can you just help me do something, and then he'll literally turn the volume up in my ears, and I'll hear a line out of a song, and it'll bring me right back, and I'm able to let that part of it go and understand that I this calling on my life didn't come from me. I didn't ask for it. I just answered it, and so for me, I can surrender some of the weight of that weight vest in those moments. So if I do, and when I do, let's be real, put it back on, it's not 25 pounds anymore. It's only 15.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we talked about, is finding those little ways to just take some of
those little removable Velcros.
Exactly.
That shit comes off.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's, that maybe every time he picks up the guitar, when he puts that weight vest back on, it's maybe 1 pound less than it was earlier. So, Yeah, it was a really interesting discussion. So I'm glad to have it with you as well, because
Yeah, I like the analogies, right? And I think that for a lot of us, especially as men, that weight vest will never come off. It's part of who we are. Whether society forced us to be that way or not is another argument that I could go on for days. But it's our burden to bear as men. But sometimes we forget that that entire suit is covered in Velcro.
right.
And
Well, so I got to challenge you on that. It's our burden to bear. It's our choice. It's our choice whether or not to bear that burden.
how many of us say no?
No, absolutely.
And so what you're maybe changing how I say it, but yeah, how many of us say no? And that's where the societal thing comes in. Like, there's a choice. There's a big one. There is, but in the time, especially with the work that you and I do, like we see it all the time. It's if you don't wear the vest, you're something. If you do wear the vest, you're something. If you load the vest up, you're something. Or there's a weird, uncommunicated requirement for men to do something with that fucking vest.
Yes.
And you and I are trying to be like, no, take the damn thing off.
Yeah.
Even though we both wear it.
Oh, absolutely.
even though we both wear the damn thing, we both know that it's not healthy to wear that thing all the time.
Yeah, and I think the more important piece is just recognizing when you're wearing it, what you're wearing it, where it's coming from, and what it's creating, what it's causing.
Yeah,
that armor.
Who are you allowing to add weight to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that back to I've removed him from my life. Absolutely. So you're right. Putting up those boundaries, and that's something I talk about a lot. Is understanding boundaries, and you and I will have to have a conversation. And commented on one of my posts. She said, "Agree to disagree." I said, "Doesn't matter what or who is right or wrong. It's about what you're willing to accept in your life. You get to decide." And again, I think too often we get caught up in this need to be righteous and this need to be correct. And the reality is, a lot of times it's just we're spinning wheels, right? And it doesn't fucking matter if your opinion is right or wrong. It doesn't matter, because if I'm not willing to accept your opinion and your influence in my life, if I feel like you're adding weight to my vest, it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong.
Yeah,
I've got the choice to say, you know what, I don't want to see Ethan anymore.
Yeah.
I don't need to argue with you whether you're right or wrong.
Absolutely,
you can be right all day long.
You could be 100% right. Doesn't matter if you're adding weight to my vest.
Exactly.
And I agree. Absolutely. I love that. And that's the biggest thing. Hey, Justin, it's Pity the Fool Fitness. It's a big thing to understand that, like, those arguments are just that.
Yeah.
I don't actually owe you anything. Like, and that's the kind of my big thing right now is, like, people want a piece of everything you do in when you're doing something. And everybody's going to have an opinion. My biggest struggle right now is everybody wants to have an opinion on how to attack what you and I do. How do we go forth in making change? Well, I'm sorry, but you had the chance to do it your way. I'm doing it the way that I know how, and the way that's effective for me. Between me and Mike, our approaches are different. How we deliver our message are different. But I have nothing but love and respect for you because you are doing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, it's going to take an army of us doing things completely different ways. So
to reach people that have completely different ways of learning and understanding and growing and healing. That's why this is the work that you and I get to do, because there's so many different avenues open. There's so many different ways to approach this. Mine is raw and real. I don't care who I offend. If people don't like hearing about it, the biggest thing you're going to get from me is a trigger warning, because I fully understand what it's like to be in that headspace when you see that. But if I drop a motherfucker to get my point across, it doesn't change my point.
Right.
If that's what changes my point for you, find another mental health advocate, someone else that will deliver it a little bit nicer than I will. But my life has been filled with motherfuckers, so I'm going to use it when I deem it necessary.
Yeah, I totally agree. Alan, being vulnerable about mental health and mental illness matters. Yes, absolutely.
Vulnerability is is as men is the thing. If I can convince more men to be vulnerable, we're going to win this war.
Yes. Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. I'd love your take. So, vulnerability to me, when we talk about masculinity, it's kind of this removing of the armor, the dropping of the mask. But I sometimes wonder, does it become the mask behind the mask? Does vulnerability have the potential of becoming a mask in and of itself?
Oh, absolutely. But now it's not necessarily a mask. It's a crutch.
Right.
But it does, but so does everything. Right?
Mhm.
Vulnerability, especially and let's go back. Let's bring it back to the last time you were vulnerable when you were a child. Who were you vulnerable to? Your parents, if you had them, 90% of the time, 85% of the time. I'm not gonna, don't quote me on that percentage stat wherever you guys are. That shit is made up. I'm shot. Delete the number. It's a high percentage. You were vulnerable because you needed somebody to take care of you. A lot of us as men, that stops happening, and we now move through life without that vulnerable scale. So when we start to become vulnerable again, when we learn that it's how life should be, what do we draw on? The 4-year-old.
Right.
When was the last time I was vulnerable? Right. I needed something from my mom. So you get into that. Now I'm 4, but as a man, the danger there when you becomes that mask is if you stayed as a 4-year-old.
Right.
The looking for being vulnerable so you can get something, so you can get the attention, you can get that love you're missing, you can get, because that's what vulnerable was at that age. Vulnerability now means letting people in.
Yes.
Not what you can get. And that is where that danger lies, is can we as men understand that vulnerability means taking the wall down, not searching to get.
Yeah, well, I like the way you said that. So it's about that. It's about letting people in, as opposed to using it as a tool. And that's a good test. Am I doing this to legitimately let somebody deeper into my life? Am I sharing this? Am I doing this so that Ethan and I can legitimately have a deeper connection? Or am I using this as a tool?
Yeah, and therein lies the danger. And it's not, so when I use the word danger, it's not a negative, not necessarily a negative thing. It's there's a certain amount of healing that has to happen for that vulnerability to be able to make that switch in not using it as a tool versus using it to take the wall down. Like that in and of itself is where the rub is are you healed enough to make that differentiation? If not, then you've got work to do. And that's no different than learning how to emote for me. Like anger. If I'm sad, I get fucking angry and I hate it, because when I'm crying, people think that I'm sad, and no, I'm just trying not to kill you. I hate that. Right. I have anger. And for me, it was how do I emote sadness without getting angry? And that has taken a shit ton of time. Now I cry in my videos and I let that emotion happen. It's not that I'm forcing the tears, it's that I've learned to be okay with the tears. Right. After being told that crying makes you a pussy, crying makes you soft, crying makes you weak. No, I've made more connections and friends and saved more lives by letting tears roll down my face when something irks the shit out of me than I have fighting it and just being angry. And that comes with a ton of healing, a lot of healing. But for me, if I can emote, if somebody like me can do it, then someone out there watching this that thinks that they have no tears left can see me do it and do it as well.
What's the advantage for you being able to do that? What are the benefits?
Being able to emote like that?
Yeah, well, because we often talk about this. It's okay for men to cry, but I would take it further that not only is it fucking okay, it's fucking life changing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you can get there. So I'm curious for you, what has that opened up for you? What has that done for you?
It's opened up a lot, actually. It's really quite fascinating. There's obviously days, like yesterday was one of those days when I'm like, am I doing this right? And is anybody listening anymore? Am I doing it? And God's really been great for me. I have that thought, and 2 hours later I get a message from them to be like, man, I started therapy last week. I just wanted to thank you. I'm like, you're funny. El Smooth, you're funny. Okay, I'm on the right track. But for me, one of the first time that I really cried and hard when I wasn't angry in front of somebody, was with my therapist. And he just let it happen. That asshole. Just let it go. Just let me cry in his chair, just sob. But then he asked me something afterwards. He said, "How do you feel?" And that was like my shoulders were down. Like I was still like, but my shoulders were down. I didn't have the tension in my core. My legs were relaxed. And I was just like Alan said, like it was cleansing. I felt like I wasn't bottling and holding on to that shit anymore. Learning to do it in public was a different thing. And it was, I promised myself that if I could feel the tears coming, that I would let it happen. And it was kind of uncomfortable for the first little while, learning how to do it. And I don't actually remember which video it was the first time I cried, but everybody noticed it.
Right.
And everybody like were commenting, liking, messaging me, being like, "I cannot believe you just cried on screen like that. How did you get there?" And for me, it was just, I let the emotion go. I let it happen. I emoted it. It wasn't that I tried to do it. I didn't force the tears out, but I let myself experience what was happening to me. And therefore other people got to experience it in a much more real way. Like we talked earlier about how like my delivery of my shit is very raw. I grip people with effectiveness because of how I deliver my story. So when people see how hard I can be and then see that hardness turn to tears, it does something to them where like, this dude should hate the world, and he's literally he's showing a vulnerability to so wait, but I stop myself from crying all the time. Like, why? How can he do that publicly? I can't even do it in private. And it makes them think like, well, maybe I missed something. Maybe there is something in it. And I've had good friends, 15-year-long friends, message me and be like, "Man, I cried the other day and didn't fight the tears, and I felt so much better." Like I let that. I'm like, yes, that's it. That's it. I do it publicly so people can do it privately. I let it happen so people can see that a hard ass that has no reason to have any emotion anymore can have it and let it happen, and show like, people will tell me that I need to toughen up and whatever. I get it. I get those messages too. And I just disregard them now. Usually I would tell them to fuck off because it makes me feel better.
I just wanted to do that.
There's lots of times that I'm just like, I'm a Buffett. It's shiny. But a lot of times for me, I realize that those people are just so broken that for me, it's not my job to force them to cry. It's only my job to be vulnerable publicly. It's their choice to join me on that vulnerability or not. So be it. But if you're over there telling me to toughen up, then you're kind of missing the point of following me and supporting me and showing and listening to my message, because my message is to change the way that we view men and masculinity and what it is to be strong. See, for me, I know that if I'm crying publicly for people, it is showing just how strong I am.
Yes.
Because to let people see that side of me when something breaks my heart takes a lot more courage than showing anger. Takes a lot more strength than showing anger.
And that's the thing that I keep coming back to. You know, the guys that push back and still want to contend that vulnerability is weakness. That's exactly it. Like, how much fucking courage does it take to punch somebody in the face? Not a lot.
I do it all the time.
How much courage does it take to actually stand there, look in the mirror, drop all that shit, and say, "Who am I really?" And
I'm human.
Yeah.
Guys, like, fuck, we are still human. We're not fucking robots. We're not war machines anymore. Fuck out of here with that bullshit.
Yep.
And I'm a perpetrator of it. I lived it. I lived by bloody knuckles and broken ribs my entire life. I lived for that. That was what it was to be a man. If somebody wasn't hurting because of me, I was not being a man. If I wasn't dealing with pedophiles and women abusers and child abusers and making money hurting people like that, being the man, like, that was it. That was what it was until 2018.
Yeah, that's
now
awesome.
I'm much more effective at being a solid human being and being the man that I am called to be. The moment I stopped with that bullshit idea of what it meant to be a strong and able-bodied man.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I mean, there's just so much for me when I learned to do that, and I continue to learn to do that because it's an ongoing process. But the richness of experience, the depth of experience with everything in life is just, it's so much more vast. And there's just so much more alive. It's, again, for me, it's the difference between living in black and white and sort of 4K color,
Hmm.
kind of thing. And that, you know, again, I try and sort of talk about the benefits because I feel like we're starting to get bombarded with this. It's okay for men to cry. It's not only okay, it's fucking life changing, guys. Like,
Hmm. It's life changing, and it's funny because it's like it's okay for men to cry, and it is, but we missed the ship a little bit. And the way that I like to portray it is we're like men and women, we're human together. We act like men don't have hormones. We
right.
act like men don't feel shit because we force them into it. And it's a choice. You can step up and be a man or whatever, but it's a little bit, you are your surroundings.
Yeah.
And for how many hundreds of thousands of years has our surroundings been this one idea? But we draw off this warrior mentality of being the stone wall of whatever bullshit from 500 years ago, when and it never changed. We're not in war all the time anymore. We're not worried about being invaded all the time. And it's been how long? Is there still war and conflict all over this marble? Absolutely, but it's not like Sherwood Park. We're not going to come and try to take over the east side of Edmonton. That
Right.
shit doesn't happen anymore. So why have we not adapted as men into this lifestyle of the 21st century?
Well, and to bring it back to something you touched on earlier too, it's even more recent than that. So, we do these things as 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds from a protection standpoint. You had to do certain things when you were 4, 5, and 6 just to get through those fucking uncomfortable feelings, like these things that nobody should ever experience. So you had to implement some coping mechanisms because you didn't have the resources at that age.
Yeah, mine was Stockholm syndrome.
Right, right. But as we get older, now we've got a lot more resources. We've got a more emotional maturity. So understanding that, just like from an evolutionary standpoint, where you said 500 years ago we may have had to show up this way, today we don't. Well, we don't have to show up the same way. I guess my point is being able to have a look at what are those coping mechanisms that we're holding on to today that as a child served us well.
Yeah.
But today they don't serve us so well.
Absolutely.
And that can be hard. So before we wrap up,
yeah.
Sorry?
No, I was gonna say that one is really hard. Is how do you not, especially if you've blocked out.
Yes.
If you blocked it out and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got to learn emotions. No matter what, your brain will go, well, the last time we learned an emotion, I was 7. So what did I do when I was then? And that again is back to that. Can you decipher the two and make it work for you now rather than staying where you were?
Right. And that comes back to practice.
A lot of it. A lot every day. Every other day, whatever.
Yeah, whatever you can. I want to touch on what you sort of opened with and talked about, and give folks some takeaways as far as, as you said, like, how the fuck did nobody see this? How did nobody ask the question? So if we're walking around in everyday life and we see something with somebody we care about that just gives us that little, something ain't right, what do we do with that?
Oh, there's plenty of things you can do with it. If it starts, for me, the biggest thing is like what I hammer home with people is community. Like that's my biggest takeaway from all this stuff is loving one another, learning to love yourself better so you can love others better, building the community of love and support. If you notice something that makes you just not feel all that right, is it that hard to say, hey, my inbox is open. You can always come to me. If you just want to shoot the shit, maybe you want to grab a coffee, maybe you want to grab a beer, maybe if they're not old enough to stay with coffee or something. But it's opening your heart to somebody else and letting them see it happen. Right? I don't need to know. I don't need to go, I'm an investigator, I'm going to do this. Hey, I'm another human on this planet that cares greatly about you. Yeah. I'd like to see you succeed. Is there something going on? How can I support you? Not what can I do for you? You can always come to me. You have to do this. It's my question is, how can I support you today? is there any way that I can support you through this? Is there any way that what I have to offer can be helpful to you? People know that I have tons of resources and all this and that, and so I get that one a lot. But even just as friends, it's how, like, I'm having a bad day. Well, how can I support you today? I don't know if you can, but thanks for asking. Like, that in itself gives them permission to always come back. And people, try it right now. Find somebody you haven't talked to in a week and a half and say, hey, is there any way I can support you today? I felt the need to reach out to you. And you might get a no, you might get a, oh, thanks, I'm glad somebody thought about me today, but no, I'm good. Like, that little bit of you can lean on me is one of the most beautiful things you can give somebody, because at some point, especially if they're in need, they will come.
Yeah, for me, there's one word that shifts everything, and I often I use this as a bit of a hook at the beginning of my speech. I'm going to share with you the one word that could change somebody's life, and that word for me is really. Hey, Ethan, how you doing? Really, like really, not a oh, I'm fine, off we go. How you doing? Really, like I really want to know how you're doing. And that it's been super interesting to see the kinds of responses I get when I do it that way. When I, rather than just, hey, Ethan, how you doing, man?
Absolutely.
Hey, how you doing? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a default. You do it. That's the wall. It's the wall talking. Yeah. You're not meeting the person. You're meeting the wall.
Yeah, totally.
9 times out of 10, you are not meeting the person you're talking to. I know we got to get out of here, but you're meeting the wall. So that secondary question usually catches people off guard, where they have to go, yeah, no, I'm good. And you can tell that hurt them to say, because now their brain, their self-defense mechanism is like, one shot fired. Now I got to reload. Wait, what did you say? Fucking reload, damn it. No, yeah, I'm good. Like it messes with that self-defense mechanism, and you can see it happen. And for you as the person asking, when you see that happen, that doesn't mean jump right into a line of question. That means log this away because something's up. Come back tomorrow and just check on them. Ask them the same question, because something is obviously there, and it may take you 100 times.
Yeah, and it's just about creating that space.
Absolutely.
As you said, we don't need to fix anything. All we need to do is create that space.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, Alan. I appreciate it.
Justin says, it's amazing how there are many different reasons men struggle with mental health, but in the end can always come back to just trying to be that. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's the weight vest, it's the front, it's the mask. That's what I come back to. Like, again, when I looked at when Colleen was murdered, and I looked at, how do we fix this? Is it about the justice system? And sure, there's lots of things that need to be done there, but that root cause, it really comes down to this. And that's why I say the reason I'm passionate about teaching men that emotional reconnection practice is because emotionally connected men don't fucking kill people. They don't kill themselves. They make better partners. They make better husbands. They make better fathers. They make better leaders. They make better human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. I get the message all the time from people. All the time is, I'm so impressed with your ability to share.
Yeah.
Like, your story is nasty, and you can still, without care or regard for how it makes you feel, you put it out there for other people, to help other people. Like, I can't understand how you do that. I mean, for me, it means that you keep moving forward. For me, it's all about the community around me. It's using my nasty, because my nasty was so gross for so long that it almost killed me. It still almost kills me. But I've got a picture in my room. In Genesis 50:20, you tried to use something to beat me, to kill me, but God is turning it into good works that will save the world. And that's exactly how I live my life now. I take that shitty story and now I'm using it to change this world for the good. And if it kills me, if I've got to do it by my fucking self, I'm going to change this world.
Nice. You're going to make beautiful shit happen, my friend.
Yes, sir.
I like it. I like it a lot. Ethan, thank you so much for sharing your story with us here. It's been great to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
And my friends watching, as always, continue to make beautiful shit happen and have yourself a fantastic